Hi guys, welcome to the second section in your online lesson plan. So if you've already finished watching the previous lecture in which we were talking about the first phase, which is the warm-up phase of your lesson plan, now we're going to move on to the second part. So once you're done, you've planned your warm-up section, you've set the objectives, you've started the warm-up questions or your lesson springboard. Now's the time for you to start moving on to the second phase. All right, so on today's agenda, we have three things that we want to cover. The first thing is general tips, things that could help you out during this presentation phase, what you can do to make the best out of it. And then I'm going to move on to show you how to do that creatively. So I'm going to give you some creative ideas so that your mini lesson or your presentation part does not turn into a lecture so that the students tune out at the end. And then finally, I'm going to show you some online tools or digital tools that could help you with that, as we did last lecture. So first of all, what is the mini lesson phase? Well, this is the actual part where you teach. This is the actual part where you explain to the students. And this is the core of your lesson. That means the rest of your lesson, the rest of your activities, the rest of your tasks, the reflections at the end, the formative assessments, everything will be based on this part, on the skill that you teach, okay? And you cannot start that until you are done with the warm-up phase, as we said earlier. So I started with stating the objectives, and then I asked them a few warm-up questions. Now I start to move on to the part where I explain. So this is the explanation part. This is the teacher part. Okay, this is where you step up and explain. And you explain the concept, you explain the skill, and you model it for your students as well. So this is the part where you speak most during the class. However, you should not make it long, otherwise your students will tune out. So now that we know what the mini lesson phase is, or the mini lesson part is, let's start first with some general tips that could help you to make the best out of that part without students tuning out and without making it less effective than it should be. Now, there are 5 basic tips that you have to take into consideration in order to make the best out of your mini lesson. Tip number 1 is basically to reduce the TTT, or your teacher talk time, to a minimum. That means don't think of this time of the lesson as your chance to stand on stage and hold the mic. That's not how it is. If you make it long, your students will tune out. And according to modern theories and modern educational theories, the teacher talk time should not be a lot. I mean, if you are following the technique of a student-centered classroom, then the TTD should only be 20% of the class, and 80% of the class should be the STT, which is the student talk time. So you shouldn't be talking a lot. So reduce your talking time to a minimum. So the whole phase, during this phase, you are explaining. However, the part where you talk alone, the monologue, the lecture, should only be between 5 to 7 minutes. Otherwise, you will lose your students. However, the whole phase should not take more than 10 minutes. If you think that the mini lesson is the biggest chunk or the biggest part of your lesson, then you are mistaken. Then this is a teacher-centered class, not a student-centered class. In a student-centered class, you will give your students mini doses of information and cover it as quickly as possible, and then let them practice on it and do it themselves. So if the whole phase takes 10 minutes, you're only speaking 5 to 7 minutes of them, and the rest is input from your students, because you should engage them in a discussion with you. So as I said, small doses of information. Now, if you feel like it's not enough, 5 to 7 minutes or 10 minutes are not enough to teach the lesson, then that means you need to break up your lesson into chunks. You shouldn't be teaching a whole lot of information in one session. No, as I told you before, go an inch wide and a mile deep. Mini doses of information. Teach them one skill today, let them practice on it, perform on it, reflect, move on to the next part. The lesson is big, is huge. Then you don't have to cover the whole thing. As I told you, I don't have to teach the whole essay today. Maybe today I'm just teaching them how to write an effective thesis statement. Maybe next session I will teach them as well the introduction, the entire introduction. Next session, I might teach them how to build a body paragraph and so on. So tiny doses of information, let them practice on it. And if it's too big, then that means you need to break it up into chunks. Now, something that is very tricky for us as teachers is to appeal to learning styles online. And I understand that for a fact, because we cannot appeal to kinesthetic students online. Students who like to learn by moving around and getting physically involved and so on. We cannot do that online, of course. But what we can do is to appeal to the other three types as much as we can. Sorry. Visual, that means use visually appealing, like the PowerPoint I'm using here, colors, numbers, images, pointers here, colors there. Use lots of things that appeal to visual learners. Use a pointer or a marker or annotate words and so on. Auditory, that means some learners will not understand by just showing them something. You have to talk, you have to explain, and you have to engage them in a discussion as well. So don't just show them something that is visually appealing. They have to hear you. So let's say if I'm teaching a lesson, I'll make sure that I have attractive visual appeals in my PowerPoint, and I will accompany that with my own voiceover as I explain. Now, tactile students are also a little bit difficult to appeal to, but what I usually do here is I ask my students to get a pen and a paper and take notes and then discuss it with me, or highlight or annotate through the PowerPoint as I explain, and so on. Again, it falls back to the kind of tools you have at your hands and the kind of things you can provide to your students. And the last thing is to get creative, and this is the hardest part about it. If you keep it traditional, you will lose your students. Always surprise them. So don't always just share a PowerPoint and explain. No, think outside the box. I'm going to give you a few ideas. This is what the next part is all about. How to get creative in your online lesson, especially in the explanation part or the presentation part, which is the hardest part to get creative about. Now, the next thing I'm going to discuss with you to follow up what we just said, to follow up on what we just said about being creative, are some creative ideas that you can incorporate in your lesson to make sure that it is not a lecture. So it's fine if you share a PowerPoint every now and then, as long as you follow the tips that we covered earlier, make it visually attractive, accompany it with your own explanation, ask for students' input, make it as short as possible, and so on. However, it's also a good idea to not always follow that technique. Get creative. So here I'm going to show you a few, or actually I'm going to show you 3 ideas that you can use to teach other than just giving a lecture on a PowerPoint presentation. So as we said earlier, remember that creativity is key. So you might even come up with ideas that I did not mention. You might come up with another concept that I did not mention here. The possibilities are endless if you give yourself the chance to think. It's not going to be easy, I understand that for a fact, but it is going to be fun. As a teacher and as students as well, they're going to enjoy your lesson more, and you're going to enjoy your job more when you realize that it's so rewarding. You're managing to teach them and make them enjoy the lesson as well with such little tools at your hand. Okay, so the first idea we have here is to use a video. And please, whenever I give you an idea, just please automatically add to it, even if it's not written. I want you to think of it automatically as teachers, plus discussion. That means if you are showing your students a video, you have to discuss it with them. You have to ask for their input. Okay, so first of all, don't just show them the video. You have to give them a purpose, which means 2 things. An aim. We're going to watch this video to understand, to know, to learn more about blah, blah, blah. And what I want you to do is to watch the video and answer these questions, and then give them 2 to 3 questions that they have to answer as they watch. Again, you're appealing to different learning styles. You can tell them you can take notes if you want to. It's up to you, or you can just listen to the video and discuss it with us later. And then make your video short. Research has proven that students are mostly engaged when videos are from 6 to 9 minutes long. If it's longer than this, your students can lose focus and can tune out. And you can actually, kind of makes sense. You can think of it on your, as yourself, as a teacher. When you watch a video, you tend to pay more attention and you're more motivated to watch a video that's short. So make the video short, and remember that the whole phase of the mini lesson should be 10 minutes. So it's not in your best interest to choose a video with 9 minutes. You still want to give them a purpose and an aim and questions, and then you want to follow up on that video and explain a concept. So make the video as short as you can. The third tip I have for you here is just to help you out with technical issues, which is to share your screen directly instead of sending the students links on YouTube or a link for a video. No, play the video on your laptop, share your screen and show it to your students. This way you guarantee that everyone can see it and that you can explain as well, and you are free to pause it whenever you want, or you can rewind it, you can go back, you can check for understanding, you can talk to different students. So don't send them the link and tell them to watch. You can do that after the session if they want follow-up. But during the session, play the video, share the audio, share your screen, and discuss it with them. Also, make sure that the video is not too difficult and not too quick and not too easy. It has to appeal to your students' learning level. Again, to avoid technical issues, have a plan B. That means instead of playing the video on your computer or on YouTube as a link, download the video beforehand, before the session. Download it on your laptop, play it, try it out, see if it works. And then if something happens during the session and you cannot open YouTube or you cannot open the link of the video, you just can play the video on your laptop and then share your screen. Finally, as I said before, ask for students' input. Turn it into a discussion. Don't just show them a video and then tell them to answer. Otherwise, again, it's still a lecture. What you have to do is you have to show it to them, and then once you're done, pause the video and then ask for students' input to answer the questions that you mentioned earlier. And as they answer those questions, you'll find that you're already explaining the lesson, and then you can follow up those questions with a short, like a mini explanation, a mini presentation, and then you're done. Now, the second idea I have here for you is to use something that appeals more to visual students, to use a visual. And that visual could be a picto chart, an image, an infographic, whatever you think is best. You can use that with your students and then also add a discussion to it. Now, another reason why I also said to add discussion is because this also appeals to your auditory students. Whenever you teach something and you make sure there's a discussion that accompanies this process, then you are appealing to your auditory students as well. So instead of showing them a PowerPoint or a Word document, what you can do to get more creative is to show them, to share with them an infographic or a picto chart, as you can see here, and explain the concept through it. So for example, those are examples of grammatical things. So you have here, let's say I'm teaching them the noun groups. Okay, I can show them this and explain it to them and point using my pointer like this, like that, arrows, blah, blah, blah. Ask them to read, ask them to explain, and so on. Also here, this is something a bit more basic for beginners. If I want to teach them the difference between, let's say, articles, between a, an, and the, instead of showing them a PowerPoint, I can show them this picture and then hold a discussion. Again, remember that with visual students, it's also a good idea to use pointers, colors, highlighters, whatever it is that can help your students understand better. Here's another example of another picto chart on a more advanced level. If I'm teaching, because I was teaching, for example, my grade 12 students, 11 and 12 students this year, I was teaching them to prepare for the IELTS test. So this is something that could help you out as well. Instead of talking for hours about the test, you can show them a nice, interesting picto chart like this and then explain using it, or ask students to read different parts and discuss it with them. So as we said, there are some tips. Make it a teachable moment. That means this is not you showing them pictures. Please don't misunderstand me. You are using the pictures to teach them. But instead of sharing content in a boring way, you're showing it in a more creative manner. The second thing is to make it short, simple, and direct. As we said during the whole phase of the mini lesson, make it short and direct and simple so that your students do not tune out. Again, share your screen, as I said, with the video. Don't give them the link. Don't share it in a chat, in a meeting chat. Show it to them and share your screen and then start talking. Appeal to students' learning level, which means, as I showed you, there were a number of picto charts. Some were very basic and easy, and some were more advanced. So it depends on the level of your students. Download it beforehand, as we said earlier, so you don't get stuck with loading issues. And again, ask for students' input. You're not talking, you're not lecturing, you are showing them something and you're holding a discussion and you're getting input from them. You are eliciting the information from them. You are not teaching, you are directing them. Now, the third idea I have here, and this is actually one of my favorite ideas ever, and I've tried it with my students and it got me amazing results, is to let your students teach. And this is amazing on so many levels because A, you're breaking the monotony of the lesson, and B, you are giving the students better verbal skills, you're giving them better confidence, and they even retain the information better when they explain it. And funnily enough, sometimes students pay more attention when their friends are explaining. So it kind of adds some sort of fun to the class. So what you do is you choose a student beforehand and you tell them that they're going to explain this lesson on that day. Please prepare a short 5-minute presentation to teach this concept. They research it, they prepare it, and they send it to you beforehand, and you review it. This is how it usually goes. So first of all, you choose a student that you know is reliable. You can trust them. When you tell them to prepare the lesson, they will prepare it well. They know how to find the information. They have enough knowledge. And anyway, you're going to have to review it. So once they're done, give them a deadline. Let's say, for example, one night before, they will send you back the PowerPoint. You can tweak, modify, check everything is fine, send it back to them, and then they can start explaining next lesson. So once you're done with the warm-up and the objectives, you can say, okay, so today Sarah's going to teach us today's lesson. She's going to talk about blah, blah, blah. Please let's listen to Sarah. And please pay attention to her because there is a quiz at the end. When you tell your students that, they will pay attention to her and they will not give her a hard time. However, whenever she's explaining, make sure that you pay attention. You are 100% focused on what she's teaching. This is not your free time. This is not a chance for you to relax and get a cup of coffee. No, this is a chance for you to watch the flow and monitor instead of actually teach, because she might need your help. So step in when it's necessary. So if there is something that she needs your help with, if there is something where she is stuck, if there's a question, if a student is asking her a question and she's unable to answer, or she answered it but not in the best manner, you can intervene with like, Miss, this is what I usually do with my students, and it works great. I'm like, Miss Sarah, would you please allow me to answer this question? I have another opinion. And I would just intervene and help out without embarrassing her or him. It works for girls and boys, by the way. I've done it with both and it was amazing. Also, what you can do at the end is to recap once she is done, after she's done with the lesson. So just recap everything that she said in 1 minute. Do not reteach. And I will tell you why. If you reteach, then the students will know from now on that when a student is explaining, they don't need to listen because the teacher will explain again anyway at the end. So that's not what you do. So this is just, you step in at the end. Thank you so much, Miss Sarah. And I'm going to summarize quickly what she said. Any questions for her? Yes, no, and then you leave. And also you ensure that you do step in for those students who need to hear the information from you. I hope you get what I'm saying. I mean, there's a balance. Some students will not understand except when you speak. And at the same time, you have to teach them to listen to one another. So do not step in unless necessary. And at the end, recap for just 1 minute. 1 minute, that's all you have to review. Now for the last part of the lecture today, I'm going to show you some tools that you can use online for the mini lesson part of your online session. So as usual, we'll start with the basics. If you're not tech savvy and you're worried about experimenting with new things, then you could just go back to the basics, prepare PowerPoint slides, Google Slides, or use the interactive whiteboards you have on Zoom or on Teams, or just show them a video from YouTube. That's just the basics. Okay, and I know you might think that YouTube is not the basics. No, I mean because there are other tools that you're going to see later on where you can embed the video in your PowerPoint. Okay, however, don't get stuck there with the basics, because as I said before, your students will get bored. You're trying to make your class more engaging. So some ideas are Nearpod. Again, I mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to attach a link, a couple of videos. in the resources so that you can check them. Just watch the videos. They give you a quick brief over the website and how you can use it, and then just go create an account and start experimenting with it. It's amazing because it allows for student input. So there can be like a section for them to write comments, or they can answer questions and so on. Also, Prezi is another website, but this is not, it's not interactive in a way that you get feedback from students. It's interactive in the way it moves around. It's, let's say it's engaging. Interactive is not the best of words here. So let's say engaging PowerPoints, because interactive means you get input from your students as well. Again, you can find ready-made Prezis, by the way, by other teachers. They created their own Prezis. It's like more of a PowerPoint presentation, but in a more interesting manner, where you zoom in and out of slides, and then you tilt the words, and then you find the next slide within the letter, and so on. Slides Go, as I said earlier, this is the website I used for this PowerPoint. You just go in there, choose the template that you like, download it, and then edit your PowerPoint. And Emaze, again, it's a 3D online presentation. Again, it's another very engaging online website, but again, you can create only 5, and then you have to start paying. And I will attach also a link for that in the resources section. So you can go and check those resources, links or videos on those resources, on those tools in the resources section, in order to start experimenting with them, start, I don't know, playing around with the website, try it on your own. It could be fun. It could be a lot of fun. And we're done. Finally, before you leave, please, as usual, reflect and answer those 3 questions, either mentally or on a notepad or in a sticky note or out loud. What did you learn today? What makes an effective mini lesson? And then I want you to go deeper and think of some changes that you could do to your own mini lesson, your current mini lesson. Now that you have found out what you can do to enhance it, what are some changes you need to make? What are some things you need to tweak in your own lesson plan? And then choose 2 online tools from tools I mentioned in the previous part, 2 tools, and experiment with them right here. So let's say, for example, you choose Nearpod and you choose Slides Go. Just start experimenting with them. Choose which ones you would be more interested in, so that you can start working with them with your students later on. Thank you guys for watching. See you next lecture.